Nobody has ever gone behind the scenes on labor negotiations. How about we broadcast a collective bargaining session live? Who says yes? Who says no?
I think the league says no and the players say yes.
In 3, 2, 1. Hello, I'm Scott Soshnick.
And I'm Jacob Feldman, and this is the Women's Basketball is Blowing Up Sports Business Podcast, the Sporticast.
Oh, I love having Haley Rosen on. First of all, can I criticize the original co-host? I mean, Eben Novy-Williams.
Of course.
We plan all this. The SOB puts a bid in on a house, and everybody can sympathize with how the real estate market works. It's accepted. His broker's like, you better get that inspection done today or else the house is going back on the market for the weekend. So he bolts to, I won't say what town he's looking at, but Novy-Williams is on his way to an inspection on a rainy day, which is the way you want it. So that is why he is not here.
That's true.
I'm thrilled that Mr. Feldman joins us, as he always does. And Haley, let me start macro level because I know where your head was at. You're like, the damn WNBA Finals are being overshadowed by all of this off-the-court drama.
The fun business stuff.
Yeah, but, and this is a big caveat, the numbers were great. People are watching. So is it being overshadowed? Is it just tangential? Are people interested in all of it? You tell me now that we have at least Game 1 ratings as we head into Game 3.
Yeah. Well, Scott, Jacob, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, listen, I think my thought is there is so much positivity in women's sports right now. And this CBA story should be breaking through and should be making national headlines. And I think it's important and exciting that it's part of the national zeitgeist right now. And also, I think we're missing out on a lot of what's happening on the court. Where is the conversation around the Aces were 14-14 and went on a run for the back half of the season and have been on a complete tear. Like, the Mercury have 2 returning players this year. They've totally rebuilt their roster. There's a lot of meat on the bone right now that I don't think is breaking through and part of the national conversation. And I think it's a disservice to fans. And I think if you look at how many people are showing up, they're showing up watching the game, showing up in real life, there's this excitement. I think the national conversation is not serving those fans. And for me, it continues to prove that legacy media, they have a slot for a token women's sports story. And that story right now is the CBA conversations. And again, that should be part of the national discussion, but there's a lot more there that fans are thinking about and talking about. And I think it continues to point to, there's this massive rise in women's sports. There's this massive, uptick in interest and excitement, and our legacy outlets are not set up to serve that growing fan base. And so I call that out as, just a moment of opportunity and also urgency to meet fans and continue to engage with them as this space evolves and grows.
We'll get into that whole legacy outlets thing. I'm like, who cares about them anyway? Dying breed. Who cares about them? We're all direct too. Everybody's their own, their own company, media company. But let me ask you this on a quick advisory. If you were sitting with Nafisa Collier, would you say, hey, I love the message. I got it. I get it. Go, fight, win. I got it. But maybe during the series, a sit down with the former vice president might not be the best idea, as that will surely garner column inches and attention, and we're going to be talking about that again while the teams are playing.
No, I wouldn't have said that.
Okay.
I think that people are paying attention to the WNBA right now. She had something she wanted to say and a message she wanted shared. This was the right time to do it. To be very clear, I'm not being critical of Nafisa or her timing. I think she had something she wanted to do. She leveraged this moment to get that done. And also, there are a lot more stories that we should all be talking about as part of this.
Yeah, I'm not sure, though. I'm not sure one really interrupts with the other. We're having both conversations here, and I understand it doesn't everywhere.
Totally.
There's a certain amount of time. I get it. But there are people. It is not every day where a star player will come out and say, this is the worst leadership, call out a commissioner. Hell yeah, that's fun. But when the game's on, I'm going to tune in, and we're talking about the game, and we'll see. Nobody wants sweeps. That's not bad. No, that's bad for business all around. But I think you can have dual-track conversations. I'm not sure one really is impeding on the other.
I totally agree that we can. it's not what we've seen from legacy outlets. And I think what you're talking about, you guys are covering more than that. We are covering more than that at Just Women's Sports. And this is sort of my point is, I was thinking about this. The MLB is having, really intense CBA conversations as well. And still there's a ton of conversation around the playoffs and what's going on. And it's exactly what you're saying. You can have two conversations at once. What I'm calling out is legacy media is not set up to have really more than one conversation in women's sports at a time. And I call it out because there's so much there, exactly what you're saying. And so fans are excited and they're engaged and they're wanting to have, a breadth of conversations around this space. How do we recognize that as a media industry and quickly meet that moment? Because they're here now, we need to serve them and continue to see that grow and evolve.
Jacob, how are you watching it all? Yeah, go.
Well, yeah, we can talk about how we're watching and consuming it, because that's really what I wanted to ask. It's kind of a two-part question here in terms of how you are tracking both the conversation and the demand for conversation, and kind of why you think there's a gap in between those two. And then, how do we get to fixing it, to solving that problem, to addressing that gap?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's one example of this is like Stephen A. Smith had commentary on Fee's statement. Have you seen any commentary from him on the on-court play?
Right.
So again, I'm just making the point that it's one headline sort of at a time. And so for me, you guys have heard me say this a million times over. I'm a little bit of a broken record, but I think we just have to recognize that women's sports is a different ecosystem than men's sports. And legacy, the sort of legacy sports industry is really, really well set up for men's sports, and more specifically, probably the NBA, the NFL, and maybe the MLB. It's their temples are, those media companies' temples or audiences want to go deep in those leagues and those athletes. It's how they work with sponsors. It's an infrastructure that's really well set up for those properties. We have to build the infrastructure of women's sports, and we got to build it now because the games are accessible, and that is a really, really big unlock that wasn't true even 2 years ago. You can watch WNBA games, you can watch NWSL games. There's this groundswell of interest and fandom that is building and growing, but we have to set up this infrastructure to take advantage of this opportunity and build this into the industry we all know it can and should be.
I'm wondering, were you emboldened by Adam Silver's comments recently when he's talking about the NBA, by the way? When he said, well, it's not just a live event. I mean, it didn't come out exactly. Some of this was thrown back at him. It's like, well, it's a highlight league. It's driven in different ways. It's on social. It's distributed differently. Well, if that's where we're headed on the NBA, I would argue maybe the WNBA is even better positioned to take advantage of where that is right now.
Yeah, I say this a lot in women's sports. We see this with our audience at Just Women's Sports. It's like 80% of our audience is under the age of 34, and it's about 80, maybe 85% are consuming not just their sports content, but their content on digital platforms. And I call this out because I think what we're seeing is there's this next gen sports fan that is very excited about women's sports, and they're consuming content, sports content, but content more broadly on their phones. And so I think instead of trying to fight this linear game or spending a lot of mental energy on TV, we need to meet fans where they're at, which is on these digital platforms. And I think that's our opportunity in women's sports, where in men's sports, there's pivoting and thinking about how you get there. Women's sports can build there and run. And so I totally agree with you, Scott. I think that's our opportunity that we need to build from.
And Haley, here's an idea we've had here on the podcast. You let me know what we think of it. Every league should have a CTO. And Emmett and I say that does not mean a chief technology officer. Leagues have those. What every league should have is a chief teenage officer. And by the way, the National Hockey League, to their credit, does have a youth advisory council, which I think is a great idea, where they get together and say, how can we bring our games, how can we bring our players, our coaches, how do we bring the culture of the game closer to you in your age group? And one of the things I think you're going to love, we have our Invest in Sports conference coming up. One of the panels we've decided to do is, I'm going to use this colloquial term, it's not the actual working title, but it's next gen. And it's next gen owners. We're talking to the children, and some are more sophisticated, some are, chronologically way older than others, but a nice spectrum. The kids of owners, we want to know, how are you anticipating and planning for sports in 2050? It's a totally different look than mom and dad have as the owner of the team.
Yeah, and I think for us, like that's really the role that like our content team plays. And I think I would encourage a lot of these leagues and teams to have maybe a chief content officer, because that is the role, that's their job, right? Is where is your audience and how do you meet them where they're at effectively? And so, we prioritize TikTok, not because I love TikTok, although I do, but because that's where our audience is and they're excited about TikTok. And so I think that's like, we have to recognize, I think Scott, you and I have talked about this, like the media landscape is shifting more broadly. This next gen sports fan is on these digital channels. It's not worth trying to fight that. We have to meet them there. We have to figure out how to create content that's engaging there. We have to figure out how to get sponsors there. But like that is the opportunity, again, that I see in women's sports of so much of this is building. That audience is already there. How do we build from where they are today and like run at this opportunity?
Hey, Jacob, I'm going to brag about some metrics on one of our recent trials, and then you jump in anywhere you want because you're the tech guy. You know everything about that. I don't know those platforms. I struggle to find the remote control. But we have a new kind of social video team here at Sportico, and we're sports business. Let's face it. Like I'm not sure what the breadth is of that audience for stadium finance, for things like that. You know what we found? Give it to them in a way they can digest on a platform where they live. And oh my Lord, we did Ryder Cup was our first big test. Haley, 2 million Instagram views, over 1 million TikTok views for Sportico, sports business on those platforms. Excuse my lexicon, but holy shit.
No, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. And I think that's the opportunity, right? It's so much about like, if you have something interesting, it's how do you package it for the right channel? And it sounds like you guys did that. So good job.
That's what I did. That's what I said to them. Good job.
Exactly.
Do it again.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Scott asked a great question about how you would, talk to Nafisa or kind of what you thought about what she did. On the other side of things, what can a league do, like the W? What can they do to help foster that conversation? Is it working with more women's sports-oriented media brands? Is it hiring their own content creators? Is it empowering their athletes to create more of their content? We saw, in Minnesota, a couple of those players creating a massive media brand that I think generated attention for the actual players in the actual games this season. Yeah. What can the leagues do in this case?
Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah. Hold on, let me just jump in 1 second here, because I don't know why we're even having this conversation. When I grew up at the University of David Stern, who created the W, who wanted this to succeed, and David's mantra was always give the fans what they want, how they want it, where they want it. That is going back almost 3 decades. This is a lesson that should be ingrained inside Olympic Tower. Yeah.
No, I mean, I +1 to that. And I think like for all these women's sports properties, and I think you're seeing Unrivaled do this, there is no rule book, right? Like we are building the plane as we're flying it. And I always say this when I get these opportunities, but it's like throughout the rule book, let's figure out what's working. Let's try some stuff. Let's try a lot of stuff that doesn't work so we can figure out what does work. But I think it's more content would be better. And I think for us too, it's what I think about is running a league is really hard, right? That's a role that I think we need to play of like, there needs to be more day-to-day content that makes it easy to be a fan. There needs to be content that's driving the conversation forward. That's the role that I think properties like Just Women's Sports need to step into. And I think we're just seeing, even with this huge rise, I mean, what was it? The WNBA, the last game of the finals had historic viewership, right? The metrics speak for themselves, and it's not meaningfully changing the coverage on legacy platforms. So like enough, that's a fight that's not worth fighting. We need to recognize if we're going to do this, we have to build it. And so I think it's, for me at Just Women's Sports, there's other players in the space as well. It's how do we pick up this torch and run? And, I'll share too, I had mentioned Stephen A. Smith on the other side, but we have a show with Lisa Leslie called Between the Lines. And I think that's actually like a really good example of what I'm talking about. She's covering this CBA drama, I think, better than anyone. She's bringing personal experience, history, context, depth, and also she's able to break down these two teams. She's able to talk about the players on the court. She's speaking to fans in a way that you're not seeing in other places. And I think it's a really, really important piece of this puzzle and of this conversation. And so again, I think I'd love to see more willingness from the league to just try, experiment. And fail and do some stuff that doesn't work. And also, I think it's, the task is really on us as media partners to step into this role and help drive this conversation forward.
Let me throw this one at you, Haley, and I'm curious to see if you think one or both or either. What would happen? We want to try something new, right? That's what we're saying. Nobody has ever gone behind the scenes on labor negotiations. How about we broadcast a collective bargaining session live? Who says yes? Who says no?
I think the league says no and the players say yes.
Oh, okay. I thought that is where you...
Yeah.
I think because of the current dynamic, I agree with you, although I'm not sure. I'm 70% toward that's where I would have gone. And then there's a piece of me that says, you know what? If they really believe in the offers that's being made and the arguments, and fine, let's put it out there for the world to see and change the narrative. So I'm not sure. But nobody's ever suggested it. Nobody's ever tried it. I'd love to see it.
To date, the NBA, the players have been much more interested in litigating this publicly, right? They're the ones who want to talk about this. They're the ones who are going on stage. So that would just indicate that they want this to be a topic. They feel like they, have a good chance in the court of public opinion, as you mentioned. But as
you know, Jacob, you're 100% right. But litigating talking points is a whole lot different than here we're laying it bare. This is where we are. This is what we've offered. It's an X% increase, and what more can we do?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, what do you think they should do? That's an interesting
It's like
question.
when you listen to the coaches huddle, the only part they play is, get back on defense and rebound. They don't play the, you're going to guard this person. This person seems like they can't go left today. We don't get that part. That's the kind of part we want, right?
Yeah, to me it seems like it would be almost like any of these hearings we're seeing on Capitol Hill. The questioning and the back and forth and the stubborn and the insults and the great, lay it bare. Let's we already have a platform then that's doing it. Labor negotiations on C-SPAN. I love it. I'm ready. I'm ready to see it. I mean, I would watch.
Yeah, no, I would too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would.
I agree. All right. So why is this not happening?
I don't know. Let's call the PA. Let's call the league.
Yeah. I'm all for it. Jacob, what are these streaming partners? You know them all. Why don't streamers jump in? This is what we're talking about. And look, there's user-generated content. There's a reason why Overtime was so successful. Legacy Media Slam, but the younger group, they have great respect. They want to be on the cover of Slam because it's something they grew up with, but they also want their practice dunk on Overtime. There is coexistence here. That's my point.
Yeah, there was a documentary that the players did on the last CBA, if I remember correctly, that was somewhat behind the scenes. I can't remember exactly what it was called. It was Game Changers or Changing the Game or Breaking the Mold or something along those lines.
Breaking the Mold is we allow you to see only what we want you to see.
Right. Sure. Right. Exactly.
That's why I mean live. So, all right, Telly, what's new? What do you got coming up at Just Women's Sports? I mean, you say, we have this, our audience wants this, they're here. How are you better servicing your fans?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in the thick of WNBA Finals right now, and I think it's been like an absolutely historic season in the W. And I'm not saying anything that anyone doesn't know, but I really do think what we're seeing from viewership, from fee statement to the conversation, around the game, like this is I think, watershed moment in women's sports. And, I've been in this space for a beat now, and I feel like I've been saying for a long time, like it's coming. I think this is the inflection point. Like it is here, the industry is here, the fans are here, people are getting it and on board. I think the task for the industry is now what's next. It's the door's open. What are we going to do? How are we going to build this? We know these women are the best in the world. How are we going to create an infrastructure that's the best in the world? And so for us, that's everything we're thinking about. I think we have this great sort of distribution and reach we've created of meeting fans where they're at on social, via our newsletter, on YouTube and audio. How do we kind of take this to the next level and bring in more coverage, more voices, more depth? I think this is the moment of more, and I think we feel tremendous urgency at Just Women's Sports to level up and meet this growing demand, and I hope the broader industry does as well.
I can feel that. I'm sympathetic to all those things. So what is it? What's the answer? What's next? What shouldn't you tell us that's coming up around the corner?
I think a big thing for us that we're thinking about, and this is what I can preview, is I think there is a gap right now around who is driving the conversations forward, who are trusted voices in the space that you can go to and think through these things with. When something big happens, when Nafisa makes a statement like she did, where can we go that we can really trust sort of that opinion and dialogue? I think that is missing in women's sports, and I think you're seeing sort of men's sports commentators jump in, and I think they're sort of jumping in with strong takes, but maybe not deep takes, and I think it's a gap right now, and so that's something we are thinking about as people start to understand sort of more the drumbeat of news coverage and what's going on day to day. Where are those people and that have opinions and can drive that conversation forward? I think it's a really critical part of the men's sports ecosystem that is missing on the women's side, and we want to step into that space.
And my pitch for women's sports broadly, also for just women's sports, is that right now I think the product is better in women's sports. The games are shorter, the seasons are shorter, there's fewer teams, so they're basically super teams. You have these rivalries, you get to know these players at a young age, you have more access to these players, the players are more fan friendly, and in a lot of ways players care more about these things at the end of the day, and bundle that all in this conversation about empowerment and this larger social revolution that's happening, and so that to me is why I think people are missing out when they're not watching these games, not following these storylines. I'm curious for you, if people want to watch more, they want to consume more and consume better, what's like the one you're going to drive them to a single, you want them to follow you on YouTube, on TikTok, the newsletter? What's the entry point that you want to drive people towards?
So on that one, like, we are across channels for like that reason. We want to just meet fans where they're at, and so I think for us that's really like the answer is we have a newsletter product that we are really excited about and believe in and put a lot of time into because we have an audience that's really engaged over there, but we also have an audience that loves us for TikTok and Instagram, and like that's okay, that's how we're building. But to your point of thinking women's sports is like better than men's sports right now, I appreciate that. I feel like for me, like, that's not the conversation that we need to have, and it's never been the conversation I've wanted to have. I don't think it's about better, worse, or comparing. It's always been about, like, there is an excitement in the WNBA and NWSL, and these are the best athletes in the world competing at the highest level, and it's never been about, I think, in sports of just purely who is the biggest, fastest, strongest. It's always been about the storylines and the competition and seeing, players go at it. Like, that is what we love about sports, and I feel like that's the reminder for me with people of like, and that's what I think is so exciting about this WNBA Finals. I mean, Asia Wilson is playing out of her mind. I want to see more of that. And so I just feel like that, like, to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about at the beginning, like, I think it's just always been about like just seeing people leave it all out there on the court, on the field. That is so fun, and that is happening at the highest level in women's sports. And so I want to continue to nurture that and have people be excited about that.
I love it that we look at it from obviously our sort of specific lens, but it's dollars and cents. And, we were the only outlet that was ever valuing the franchises, and now we've done it multiple years, and you can track the growth of the franchises. We had a story today about a team in Houston, the Houston Dash, that were almost a throw-in when they were acquired along with the Dynamo. Literally on the ledger, it was zeros. And now you have $150 or $120 million bid that should excite the heck out of the other owners in the league. Like a franchise that struggles at the gate, whatever, was zero. Now is being pulled out on a balance sheet saying this means something. I've got Mark Davis and Tom Brady in an ownership. I got Matt Ishbia, who has bigger plans. But like the who and the dollars, that's how we track it. That's what excites me about it. And obviously I get it. It's a totally different lens, but no less exciting. And I chuckle when all of the sponsor, there's a big sponsor ecosystem now of rushing to capitalize on the growing popularity of women's sports. And I get a good chuckle, and I think you'll appreciate this, Haley. They're looking to spend dollars with media outlets for different reasons and get megaphones. Right. Of course, that's the way this works. But we've been asked to justify, well, why should we work with you? What is your commitment to that? And I totally flip it. I'm like, are you out of your mind? We've been here. Where the hell have you been? We've been here. Maybe not in a way that you traditionally recognize, but we've been treating women's sports or the stories around women's sports the same as men, just stories that deserve to be told. Yeah. So I love flipping the script and say, where the hell have you been? I don't want to. I don't want to hear this.
Yeah. No. I think it's super. It's super fair. As long as we've been around, I think you guys have always showed up. You guys have covered our stuff. And I think but it is I mean, that's funny, and I'm sorry you're dealing with that. And also, I think it is exciting how many people are like, they're jumping in. It's like, great,
Yep.
the water's warm. Let's do it.
Yeah, more the merrier. That's fine, but just
Totally.
don't ask me to justify why me. Stop. Enough. Just like that. That I can't do. All right. So, what excites you the most? We only got a couple of minutes here left, Haley. What excites you the most then, moving forward? There's always going to be problems. We get it, and that's across the sport in general. But what really gets your juices flowing? What excites you now?
This is something I've been thinking about. The average WNBA game on ESPN is drawing 73% of the viewers of an average NBA game. But the women's sports sponsorship market is currently 0.3% of the men's sports sponsorship market. And so on one hand, that's a big gap. On the other hand, the audience and the interest is here and the capital is coming. And it's not all about dollars and cents, but dollars and cents are a really big part of growing and building and investing in this ecosystem. And so that to me just has me really, really excited because it's game on. People are coming and this is our moment to be able to invest and build. And I want to take advantage of it as much as I can. And I hope everyone in this industry is feeling that way as well.
How about this as an inflection point when in the not too distant past, maybe the women's sports, the WNBA, for instance, would have been a tag along or drag along? You want an NBA deal, you got to take this too.
Yeah.
I can see plenty of sponsors coming. I just want the WNBA. I'm not really interested in the NBA.
That's
I can see
starting to happen.
That's a
It's the front door.
Yeah.
For a lot of brands.
No,
Yeah.
and that's starting to happen, and that's something we're experiencing as well at Just Women's Sports. Like we're seeing brands starting to create women's sports budgets. That is new and different. And again, like on one hand, it's not all about the dollars, but on the other hand, like this whole ecosystem is really driven by sponsorship. So the brands really getting involved and invested in creating real meaningful budgets to deploy, that changes the whole game. And I think that's really exciting.
All right.
And going back to
good.
Oh, please go ahead. No, just going back to where you started. I think consumers are making a choice right now in terms of what media they're going to follow. That as they get into these sports, they're picking who they're going to consume it with, and brands are doing the same thing. And I think that's why it's so critical to be in now and to be serving these people now, because you may miss the boat a year from now if they're already kind of locked in to brands that are giving them what they want.
Totally, and it's just the start. We're on the starting line, so it's exciting.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely. I'll close it up here, Scott.
I talk over the close.
Yeah.
I always like to see.
Okay,
Evan's a
good.
professional. No, let's see if Jacob can get it done. Go ahead, Jacob. You can go ahead.
Okay,
You know
I'm
the way
Jacob
for-
Feldman.
Yeah, this is where you and I just keep going, Haley. We kept you longer than we said you would, but thanks so
The
much.
important stuff here now, man. No one's
See, that's a
listening to
tangent
guys.
because you forgot what he wanted to say.
I've got it on.
Will
this episode.
Novi
Thank
Williams get the
you,
house?
everybody.
That's the
Justin
question.
Greenaway, thank you, Justin, Sebastian Milo, and Matt Palacio.
There
over
you
at
go.
Social
You got through that
But
phalanx
like
pretty well.
Guys,
you
this
can
is
follow us at
chaotic.
Sporticast.
This
the
is
hub
what we
of the
do.
Sportico
Yeah,
Media
this is pretty
Network.
good. He did not have a lot of lead time. That knowing like you got to sub
you
in
did
for Evan.
great.
He ran out.
Okay.
Evan ran out pretty damn quickly. So nice job, Jacob. Thank you for filling
Thank
in.
you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you. It was
got it.
fantastic. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right,
I got
thanks,
to hop.
Haley.
I'll see
Yeah,
ya. Bye.
bye.